no new construction in the core areas NTCA. NTCA means National Tiger Conservation Authority. Now this is a very important topic from the environment again, right? The first topic that we took today was also from environment, and this one is also from environment. There has been a lot of controversy over one thing, that is critical tiger habitat. Okay, critical tiger habitat and critical wildlife habitat. The controversy was so strong that the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change (MOEFCC) had to issue a notification to clear the doubt. And there was a question about critical tiger habitat in UPSC as well. That is why we are studying it again. Why? No new construction in tiger reserves core area. The NTCA conducted its annual meeting and they have agreed to this direction that no new construction will be taken in the tiger reserves core areas. Now there are 2 points that we need to focus. The first one is tiger reserve and the second one is core areas. Okay, now let's look at some background. The National Tiger Conservation Authority will keep the core areas of the tiger reserves inviolate. Now another very important term, and UPSC is particularly interested in these terms. Okay, inviolate, critical wildlife habitat, critical tiger habitat. Okay, this is what UPSC tries to ask. Okay, the National Tiger Conservation Authority will keep the core areas of tiger reserves inviolate. Inviolate means free from any human intervention and free from any human settlement as well. That means we have arrived at least one point of understanding, and that is the core areas of tiger reserves will be kept free from human intervention or human population. The decision was taken during the 21st meeting of NTCA, National Tiger Conservation Authority, on Friday on the occasion of World Tiger Day. Okay, World Tiger Day. It was also decided to provide greater thrust to technology and work harder for inclusive infrastructure growth. Okay, now inclusive infrastructure growth means starting such infrastructure which does not hamper the growth of wildlife and is also in sync with the traditional the right to live in the forest of the traditional forest dwellers. Whenever we have talked about these things, we have talked about two things. The first one is the right of the people who are traditionally living in the forest to live in that forest and use its resources. And the second one is the legitimate right of the state to impose restrictions on the movement of humans or settlement of humans inside such protected reserves for the preservation of environment. So this very popular conflict is the conflict between the conservationists and the right activists. Now right activists are people who advocate for right of the traditional forest dwellers, okay, whereas conservationists are the people who talk about the preservation of the environment as the most important priority. The conservationist argument is that the forests should be kept inviolate and free from human intervention, and that should be made the priority. Okay, whereas the rights activists talk on the contrary, that they say that humans are very important. Humans are the important part of forest conservation policy. The forest management or forest conservation should be done in such a way that humans are made a part of it. Okay, humans are made a part of it. So that is the conflict between the conservationists and the rights activists. Now WPA 1972 already bars any kind of construction in the core areas. WPA World Wildlife Protection Act 1972, the clause 38(5) already bars any kind of construction activities inside the core areas, but it was not being implemented in letter and spirit. Okay, Then a petition was filed by a Supreme Court advocate in Supreme Court, of course, and in 2012, and then Supreme Court directed the NTCA, National Tiger Conservation Authority, to take the necessary steps. In the reiteration of that, now this decision has been taken that no new construction of will be taken inside the core areas of the tiger reserve. Now we need to understand two important things. The first one is tiger reserve, and the second one is what is the core area. Okay. Tiger reserves. Now, there are two kind of wildlife protections areas that have been provided in the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. The first one is national park, and the second one is sanctuaries. Now, where is this tiger reserve provided? Tiger reserve is also provided within the Article 38, Section 38(5) of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Okay. Now, very important that tiger reserves are those specific reserves or reserved areas which are the traditional habitats of tiger, and which are very important for the flourishing of the species of the tiger population. Okay. The tiger reserves are notified by state government. Okay. That means very important. This is one of the most important point of this lecture, that the power to notify a tiger reserve lies with the state government, and that is done on the advice of, on the approval basically of National Tiger Conservation Authority. What happens is the state government formulates a policy that they will be directing this specific area as a tiger reserve, and then they forward this policy to whom? NTCA, the central government, National Tiger Conservation Authority. And if NTCA approves it, then that specific area is declared as what? A tiger reserve. One important thing is the boundary of the tiger reserve cannot be diminished once it is declared without the approval of National Tiger Conservation Authority. Okay. Core or critical tiger habitat. Now, as I said that there has been a conflict between core, critical tiger habitat and critical wildlife habitat that we will look in the next slide. Now, for the time being, what is a core area? What is a core area? Now, the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 provides certain kind of differentiated protections to the tiger reserves. The first one is core area, the second one is buffer zone, and the third one is normal. Okay. So there are certain kind of activities that are allowed in the buffer zone. There are certain kind of activities that are allowed outside of the buffer zone, and every kind of human activity, including collection of minor forest produce, is prohibited inside the core zone. The core zone is the zone of highest protection. Okay. This is core zone, this is buffer zone, and this is the zone outside of the buffer zone. Okay. So outside of the buffer zone, the accommodations are allowed. Okay. If there are traditional forest dwellers, they can live in that area. In the buffer zone, accommodations or habitation is not allowed, but research can be taken out in the buffer zone. Okay. And tourism is also allowed up to a certain extent in the buffer zone. But in the core zone, tourism is very much restricted. It is around 20% of the core zone can only be accessed for tourism purposes. Okay. And secondly, no construction is allowed, no infrastructure is allowed, no habitation is allowed. Okay. And if one wants to perform some research in that, they will have to take permission from the NTCA as well. Okay. But for the buffer zone, the approval of the state government is necessary. Right. Now, the notification, the conflict is the critical tiger habitat is defined under Wildlife Protection Act 1972. In 2006, the Forest Right Act came into being. Now, Forest Right Act seeks to provide the right of habitation and the right of resettlement to the people who have been conventionally living in the forest. That is called Forest Rights Act. Forest Right Act is a very very revolutionary kind of act, in the sense that it acknowledges the right of the people to live in forest, and it provides them with the with compensation, and it provides them with the rehabilitation in case they are displaced from their traditional habitat. Okay, and when this amendment, this FRA 2006 came, तो it was thought कि अब जो how to because FRA 2006 provides right of people to live in the forest. Then an amendment in the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 was made, so that the core area can be kept out of the reach of humans by not allowing habitations in that area. Okay, I hope you understood that. And the notification of CTH, critical tiger habitat, is also issued by the state government. Okay, on the approval of course, a expert committee that is constituted by the central government or MOEFCC. The critical tiger habitat needs to be kept inviolate for the purposes of preservation of the tigers. Okay, it should be kept inviolate means it should be kept free of the human intervention. Now let's look at what the difference between critical tiger habitat and critical wildlife habitat. This is very important because these two things are mentioned in different acts and they sound very similar. Okay. Now critical tiger habitat, as I talked about, is mentioned in WPA 1972, is notified by the state government after consultation with the expert committee constituted under NTCA. Okay, and it should be need to kept inviolate for the purposes of tiger preservation, whereas critical wildlife habitat is defined not in the WPA 1972 but Forest Rights Act 2006, and it is declared by the state government after the consultation with the Gram Sabha. Now critical tiger habitat is declared after the consultation with the expert committee, whereas the critical wildlife habitat is declared after the consultation with Gram Sabha. Now why Gram Sabha? Because this critical wildlife habitat is not restricted to the, first thing is, it is not restricted to tigers. It is for the preservation of any kind of wildlife that the government deems fit for specific preservation. Okay, and with Gram Sabha, why? Because the Gram Sabha has been made the very important body in Forest Rights Act 2006 as any kind of diversion of the forest land. Okay, any kind of diversion of the forest land, any kind of change in the nature of the use of forest land can be accepted only after the approval of Gram Sabha has been taken. Okay, now what is Gram Sabha? Gram Sabha is constituted by all the people inside a village or a group of villages that of the people who have been registered in the electoral rolls. Okay, need to be kept inviolate for the purpose of wildlife conservation. This is for wildlife conservation, this is for tiger preservation. So that is the basic and the fundamental difference between both of them. Okay, and this differentiation came after the MOEFCC, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change's notification about the very same. Okay. Now what is the tiger reserve? Tiger reserve, okay, the tiger reserve is, of course, the tiger reserve has been the tiger reserve has been mentioned in the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, section 38.5, and the section 38.5 also mandates that a tiger conservation plan should be made by each and every state as well. Every state should make a tiger conservation plan. Okay, it is also mandated by the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Now the tiger conservation plan consists of three parts, as we talked about: the core zone, the buffer zone, and the adjoining area of that buffer zone. As we talked about in the diagram, core zone, buffer zone, and the adjoining area or the corridor plan. Now there are certain kind of activities that have been allowed in all three of the zones, and there are certain kind of activities that have been restricted, where the core zone is the zone of highest protection. It is kept inviolate, that means it is kept out of the reach of the general humans. Let's look a bit at the National Tiger Conservation Authority. It is a statutory body. Statutory body means it is made through a law, that is a parliamentary law has been enacted, and under that this body has been provided accreditation. So NTCA is a statutory body created under Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Okay, and the chairperson of NTCA is Minister in charge for Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. मतलब the Environment Minister is the chairperson of the NTCA, and who is the vice chairperson? Minister of State for MOEFCC. Okay. The authority lays down what is the work of this NTCA. First of all, it lays down the guidelines, standards, protocols and procedures for the preservation of tigers within the tiger reserves, national parks, sanctuaries. Okay. Second, it provides approval to the state's tiger conservation plan. Third, it provides approval to the declaration of a tiger reserve, and it also provides approval to what? The delimitation of the boundaries of core zone, buffer zone and the adjoining areas. That means NTCA is the nodal body in India for the preservation of tiger population. Okay, and we have seen that India has brought a revolutionary change in the population of tigers in the recent years. Okay, we have actually more than doubled in 10 years. The population of tigers have more than doubled in the last 10 years, and that is a very positive thing. And India is considered a pioneer in tiger population management in the world. Okay. I hope you understood that. I hope you understood all this critical wildlife habitat. What is critical tiger habitat? What are the clauses what are the important articles? What is the important act like FRA 2006 and what is the important sections in Wildlife Protection Act 1972? Now, I would like to ask one question that I would leave it to you and you can answer in the comment section. This is a statement that I would make and you have to tell me if it is right or wrong. All the animals are property of the government. All the animals are property of the government. Is that a right statement? All the wildlife, basically, if we say, all the wildlife is the government property. Is that a right statement to make or is that a wrong statement to make? And you have to also figure out if it is a right, where is it mentioned? Okay, and that we can have that in the comment section.